Hey guys, Blake here. I am playing a game on Minecraft. It's called Pixelmon, and I have a grumpy cat skin on because I'm grumpy. Okay, but I should be grumpy right now because I get to play Pokemon. I shouldn't have done that. Please don't break. So I got myself a little kit to start out with. So yeah. So I chose Squirtle. He's always so small when you pick him, at least for me. Just imagine some guys like, what do you mean you just got a giant one? I thought this was a Pokemon. Why is it all glitchy right now? That's weird. Maybe my chunks are loading in. Let me... Huh. I don't know. It's weird. Ooh, yes, Pokéloo right off the bat. Oh, and I got myself a Max Elixir, because you guys probably couldn't see that, so. A workup. What is that? I don't know what that does. Okay. We got something that we don't know what it does. Everybody's probably like, it's so easy to know. It's like, I don't know what to say. Yeah. Is that a Spheal? Yeah. Is that one of the new Pokemons? Pokemon. I hate the new Pokemon. I probably just made so many people mad, but I just hate the new Pokemon. Magnemite. He's so freaking cool. I got this. Squirtle, you tackle. Okay, that didn't do a lot. Just poke ultra ball. Just do it. I'm sorry if you guys hear me right and left clicking because it actually helps. If you guys didn't know, it helps to catch a Pokemon in this game. Pixelmon. And Pokeheal. And yes, I am using Pokeheal. And yeah, so now we got a Magnemite. Oh wait, I gotta do what Ash does. It's like, I caught him. No, wait, that's not what ball I use. I caught a Magnemite. I think that's what he says. I'm not sure. Oh, there's another Pokeball. Let's go over. Ooh, if I found a Master Ball. Ice Heal. Well, I am in the snow biome, so I might see an ice Pokemon if it tries to fight me. And I need to, but I probably won't. Because I probably won't try to fight a lot of them. I need to catch a Magikarp at some time. 4, 8. I am like really getting lag. What the heck? Let's turn that up more. There we go. That is a lot better. You're probably like, dude, that makes it even more laggy, but I'm not sure though. And I'm pretty sure that makes it less laggy, but maybe I'm wrong. Oh, they'd be fighting. I just see a bunch of Mareep. I want a Mareep, but not right now. I need to give like Burnett. I gotta do cooked beef, right? Cause this game is like stupid. Oh, I forgot to write 64. Beef 64. I don't need this extra steak. Just like you see a guy having like 7 steaks. Oh my, Magneton. Hi friend, don't be alarmed. Give me. Okay, so right after I found one, I found a better one. Oh, buddy, come on. Why can't they do what Ash does? Like he talks to his Pokemon to get them to stay with him. Stay, oh, won't you? Stay with me. Because you're all I need. They say love is clear to see. My throat is so dry I can barely sing right now. Use Thunder Shock. Yeah. Magnet Bomb. Use Supersonic. Use magnet bomb. Explosions. Oh my, I wish I could name my moves or something. Like, I'd name, like, explosion, like, what's it called? Michael Bay. Michael Bay! Yeah, I forgot. Right, left, right, left. Dang it. Killed my Pokemon. Ultra Ball. I really want this Pokemon, you guys probably can see. Come on, man! I just want you as a Pokemon! Come on. Come on! No! Come on! I want you so bad! You're such a cool Pokemon. If I just catch him with a Pokeball... If I just catch him with a... There we go. Like, Pokeballs are not luxuriable enough for me. I'm not leaving you, man. What'd you do with the Pokeball? There you go. I don't even know where the Pokeball is. But I know where you are. Get in the Pokeball. There goes another one of my Pokeballs. Oh, there's one of mine. Get in my Pokeball. Get. Can you please cooperate? Please, buddy. Stop. Oh my gosh, I've just thrown like 7 of these out here. 7 great balls. And 1 broke, of course. Just so you guys know, if you throw a bunch of Pokeballs, not Master Balls, the Master Balls won't break because they can't craft. So if I just went... If I actually threw one of these at a Pokemon, I would be so mad. See, like, it can't break. But I don't want to do it with my other Pokeballs though, because I don't want to break them all. Hey there, Magnemite. Could fight him to get him. Yeah, I'm gonna fight him. Where are you? Okay. Let me throw out Squirtle first. And you guys might be wondering, Blake, why would you throw out Squirtle? Because I'm not. But you just did. But I didn't. Thundershock, Magnet Bomb, Thundershock. Oh my, bag, HP Restore. You probably just need a potion. Nope, you did not. You needed more than that. Supersonic. This is just like really strong. Oh, and I'm just gonna be like really mad. What kind of Pokemon are you? What? When? Man, come on. Oh, here's one of my Pokeballs. No. Oh, this is a steak I threw earlier. That's why I've gone in a complete circle. Okay. I want you, maybe? I probably can. I'm just gonna throw and run. So I'm not gonna try like I did. The other one.
No, get the camera!
Oh my gosh, he has 153 freaking health. This guy's a beast. Ooh, what if I can beat another Piloswine? Why did I call it a Piloswine? Piloswine. And mud slap. Slap him in the face. Slap your friend in the face. I'm guessing they were like brothers because they were right next to each other when I find them. So, what does that do? Oh, that's kind of strong. Okay. I think one more time and it'll be dead. No, it didn't hit it though. Nope, one more time. I'll use Peck this time. Alright guys, I'll be right back. Okay guys, I'm back. Let's get back into this. Oh my gosh, how many levels did you get? Oh, water gun, trade it for bubble, bite, trade it,